I remember vividly a realization that hit me at the age of 18, after my first few months of learning in yeshiva after high school. I was at Yeshiva University in New York, and every evening I spent 2 hours in the Beit Midrash, the study hall, studying Talmud. We were learning Masechet Bava Kama, which deals with property damages, and the particular chapter I was studying at night dealt with theft and robbery and the procedures to be followed after catching a thief. One night, at 10 p.m., after my 2-hour learning session, as we were getting ready to recite Mariv, the nighttime prayer, I thought to myself, I've been learning here in this Beit Midrash now for 3 or 4 months, and the only time God's name has been mentioned in this room was during Mariv. The sign outside this Beit Midrash says that I'm in a theological seminary. I thought I was coming here to learn about my religion, but it's not true. I'm learning about theft and damages. I'm not in a theological seminary. I'm in law school. In the opening video of this series, I explained why it's a mistake to think of the Jews as a religious community. There's a parallel mistake that many people make when it comes to thinking about the Torah itself, which is to view it as a source of a religion that they call Judaism. Just as the Jews aren't a group of people who observe a religion, our holy book, the Torah, is not a book of religious doctrine. Now, don't misunderstand me. The Torah does, of course, speak about religion, but that's only one part of what it addresses. If we examine all the laws in the Torah, we see that it includes different types of commandments. There are religious commandments, like those that tell us how to worship God, including laws about bringing offerings in the temple, Shabbat and holidays, prayer, and the like. There are ritual laws, like the rules applying to kosher food, for example, and also matters of a completely different nature, such as the judicial system, civil lawsuits, politics, military matters, and much more. And therefore, a better way to look at the Torah is to see it as the constitution of a nation and a blueprint for a society. The Torah addresses every aspect of national life and instructs us how to build those institutions in a way that will be true to the designation a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, Mamlechet Kohanim, V'Goy Kadosh. It's fascinating to look at these parts of the Torah and to imagine a society that would use those rules as its guide and the basis of its laws, and to think what such a society would look like. That's a fascinating topic, worthy of its own video series at the very least, maybe in the future. But for now, let me give you a brief summary of just a few examples of the inspiring models that the Torah presents for how to build a perfect society. So, for our first example, let's start with politics and government, areas that aren't usually associated with religion. Among traditional commentators, there's a debate about what system of government is ideal from the Torah's perspective, but at least one option it describes, which according to many is the ideal, is a monarchy. But this monarchy is very different from most such systems in the ancient world when the Torah was given. The Torah envisions a kingdom led by a king, quote, from among your brethren, who, uncharacteristically for kings, is limited by various restrictions. He must not obtain too many horses, which were essential military equipment in ancient times. He may not take too many wives, which in the ancient world limited his ability to forge diplomatic agreements. And he also must not keep large amounts of silver and gold. And most importantly, he's commanded to write a copy of the Torah in a book and to read it all the days of his life in order that he will learn to fear God, so that his heart not rise up above his brothers and that he not stray from these commandments. In a kingdom like that, the king is not a tyrant or a dictator, but a noble servant of his subjects, and most importantly, a servant of the God he represents. Let's take another example, the capital city. The Torah has a unique vision of how this nation's capital city should look and the functions it should serve. Like all nations, of course, the Am Levadad needs a central location to serve as the seat of its government and the headquarters of its national institutions. In the book of Dvarim, there's a description of just such a place, where the king and the Supreme Court are based, and where all the people are to gather multiple times a year. This place is called Hamakom Asher Yivchar Hashem L'Shakein Shmo Sham, the place that God will choose to rest His presence there. At its center is the temple, which stands as a powerful symbol and reminder of the imperative for the worship of God to remain the focal point of everything that happens. The Torah also commands the people to ascend to the temple 3 times a year during the pilgrimage festivals, which are unique institutions that combine the natural celebrations of an agrarian people at key points of the agricultural cycle, together with rituals designed to pass on the nation's historical memory and sense of mission to its children. Now, anyone who visits the capital city, whether they're coming there for the pilgrimage to the temple, or whether it's to attend a hearing at the high court that sits in the temple's courtyard, or for a political meeting at the king's palace adjacent to the temple, or simply as a traveler or a tourist, all of those people would see in the very architecture of the city with the temple at its heart a tangible expression of the idea that this nation is indeed a kingdom of priests. Let's take another example. The Torah includes a system of taxation to provide funds for the needs of the public, the poor, and the priestly class, and there are a number of novel aspects to this system of tax. But for now, I want to discuss only one particularly unusual tax called Maaser Sheni, the second tithe, which demands that farmers set aside approximately 9% of their produce during 4 out of every 7 years and eat that produce themselves in Jerusalem. It's required to set this tithe aside, so it is a tax, and its use is restricted. But the farmer doesn't give it to anyone. He keeps it for himself. What could be the purpose of that? Well, because it can only be eaten in Jerusalem, essentially it creates a vacation fund that enables and encourages everyone to spend some time in the holy city, absorbing its unique atmosphere, visiting the temple, and being influenced by it. And if a farmer is blessed with so much produce that the Maaser Sheni is too much for him to eat by himself, so he'll be required to invite others to join him in this wonderful spiritual opportunity. And one more example. The country we're describing is so unusual, primarily because it belongs to an unusual people, the Am Levadad, that unique nation that needs to be a sovereign nation in its special homeland, but nevertheless can exist in exile without its own land when necessary and for as long as necessary. And this understanding helps explain another strange phenomenon. When a non-Jew joins the Jewish people, in Hebrew, we call that person a ger or a gioret, and we use the related word giur to describe the process. The common translations of convert and conversion are really misnomers. One converts to a religion, and therefore those terms derive from the mistake we mentioned earlier, viewing Judaism as a religion. But Judaism is not a religion, and a ger is not converting to religion. He or she is becoming a naturalized citizen of a unique nation, the Am Levadad. And as in many countries, obtaining citizenship includes accepting all the laws incumbent on members of the nation. Actually, the word immigrant is a closer approximation of what it means, and indeed, the Hebrew word ger does carry that connotation. But of course, that doesn't really suffice either, since you don't have to move to a different country to join the Jewish people. And therefore, we're left simply with the untranslatable word ger to describe the unique process of joining a unique nation. There's so much more to say about this. As I already mentioned, the Torah includes a whole body of criminal and civil law, including those laws I was studying about in the YU Beit Midrash that night that I mentioned at the beginning. It also has instructions for setting up court systems and a police force, an army, economic regulations, and much more. And as in all areas of the law, the written Torah includes only basic legislation, and it's accompanied by an entire system of halakha, the so-called oral law, which enables its development and application to changing circumstances. We'll talk more about that in video number 6. For now, though, I think we've said enough to demonstrate the idea I'm trying to get across. The Torah is not about a religion called Judaism. Rather, it's the constitution of a nation and a blueprint for a society. It's instructions for building a singular, righteous, just, and holy nation. In our next video, we'll discuss how these timeless laws, first given thousands of years ago, remain relevant as time passes, many things change, and the world increasingly internalizes its messages.